of all experience levels are welcome and not limited to just designers. Anyone related to UX can join. We offer sessions and events on Discord, such as portfolio reviews, practical sessions, and challenges to help build your skills. Some of the services that we offer include our weekly events, which are our virtual meetups where you can pop in and listen to our guest speakers share their journey, their takeaways, and their expertise, as well as our portfolio and resume reviews available via our ticketing system on Discord, where you can work one-on-one with our mentors to gain some insights. And we also provide design feedback, coffee chat sessions, and design challenges, whiteboard challenges, and mock interviews for you to gain hands-on experience and apply your skills. Okay, and our next upcoming event will be held next week on Thursday, September 8th at 5:30 p.m. PST/8:30 p.m. EST with our mentor, Jennifer Fast, and she will be holding the fourth event in our UX Challenge series, which is the Usability Workshop. But before we begin, I'm going to go over some of the housekeeping rules. So everyone will remain muted during the presentation, but please feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to share anything, especially during the Q&A session that will happen at the end. That being said, feel free to drop any of your questions for our speakers today in the chat. And if you need any help, our moderator for today, Jolitha, is available for you to message. We would also love to see you every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. PST for our weekly events. I would also like to encourage you to start conversations under our many channels on Discord. And last but not least, be kind and have fun. Jolitha is going to be dropping some important links in the chat if you would like to join us as a volunteer or a mentor. And there's also a link for networking where you can share the link to your LinkedIn profile. And if you like today's presentation, I encourage you to fill out the survey for future events and share your insights from today and your takeaways on social media, because we would love to hear from you. All right, and if you like what we do at IterateUX, please support us by sending a donation on Ko-fi to keep our services going. All of us are volunteers at IterateUX, so every donation goes straight into the community, and any amount is greatly appreciated. All right, so let's go ahead and give a warm welcome to our mentors, Melanie and Halliq, who will be facilitating today's workshop, the third in our UX Challenge series.
Awesome.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Good to meet everyone. Let me just quickly share my screen here. Sorry about that. Computer just... All right, can we all see my screen here? Awesome. So today we'll be going over the basics of ideation and prototyping. So ideation and prototyping 101. So before we kick things off, I wanted to give a quick introduction to the team. Today I have with me Halliq. He's a UX lead at Applied Digital. He has over 11 years of experience as a UX designer. And when I asked him how he wanted me to introduce him, his exact words were, "I am a gift and a boon from God." So this is Halliq in a nutshell. And his love language is sarcasm and insulting you. So if he says anything untowards, that just means that he really likes you. So don't worry. My name is Melanie, and I'm a product designer at Applied Digital as well. So I come from a psychology and marketing background, actually. And before being a UX designer, I was an account manager for a cybersecurity company where I learned about UX and how important it was for complex solutions. So I joined Applied Digital about a year and a half ago. And since then, the company has grown, I think almost doubled in size. We're about 400 strong now with about eight offices spread across the globe. And because we do work for a digital agency, we do get to work with a variety of clients and industries. Some of the clients include Moderna, Arc'teryx, and Kraft Heinz. So enough about us, we can start talking about design. So we're going to start off by a recap of the design process. So the first phase is, as you may know, the research phase. So that's getting to know the user. In this phase, we want to know what they do, what they think, and what they feel. We ask yourself, what are their motivations and frustrations here? And this is done through primary and secondary research. The main goal in the research phase is to gather enough insights that you can empathize with the user and understand their perspective. The second phase is the define phase. So here we're taking the research from the first phase to gain insights into the user's problems. Because we already know the user's needs and frustrations from the research, we can map out the insights from the research to the user's current experiences. The goal here is to identify unmet user needs and define any actionable problems to tackle. And that brings us to Ideate, the topic of, or one of the topics for today's presentation. So before we kick it off, I want to, introduce my good friend, Don Norman. If you don't know him, he's kind of like the Beyonce of in the UX world. And he wrote that in his book, Rethinking Design Thinking, ideation is crucial in getting us to question the obvious, challenging the norm, and coming up with new ideas. So what exactly is ideation? Ideation, in a nutshell, is the opportunity to explore as many crazy ideas that addresses the user's needs. So there's 4 fundamentals to that. First is having a clearly defined problem. This is crucial to have in order to guide and inspire ideation. The second is we're moving on from the problem phase to creating solutions. A lot of the times people try to jump into solutioning straight away, but we have to really understand the user as well as the problem in order to get to this phase. And in order to ideate, we need to have new perspectives. This helps you move away from personal biases or obvious solutioning that you come up right at the top of the head. And finally, ideation can be definitely done alone. I've definitely done ideation sessions by yourself, but it's not only more fun to do it with a group, but also I find that it's a little bit more effective. Research does show that the ideal method for ideation is actually a hybrid model where you do an ideation session by yourself and then together in a group. So why should we ideate? Well, first and foremost, inspiration is not lightning. You can't just wait for it to strike you at random. When you're tackling a problem, a systematic approach is needed, and this will help you even when you're suffering from the biggest mental block. 2, you want to look past the obvious. This is the time during the ideation phase to redefine existing solutions, approaches, and beliefs. Third is creating ownership and buy-in. By giving everybody a chance in the group to have their voices heard, this can strengthen collaboration. And by creating buy-in and ownership from the group, people are more invested in the final product. And finally, we are able to draw from our collective strengths. A variety of ideas give you an increased innovation potential, and you can build off of the diversity of ideas. All right. So if you actually want to do a workshop, who needs to be involved? Well, you always definitely need a facilitator. It's important to have at least one facilitator involved. And if you have a bigger group, you may want to have more than one facilitator. Usually, I would say 1 per 8 participant, but that's not a hard rule. It depends on the facilitator's skill level as well as how comfortable they are within the group. The role of the facilitator is to keep track of time, keep the group on topic, and make sure every voice is heard. So this means that if there is a loud voice in the group, it's not bulldozing everybody. As for the participants, I alluded to this in the previous slide, but having a multidisciplinary group can lead to a wider range of ideas and perspectives. So when you're starting to prepare your workshops, you can invite fellow UX designers, UI designers, but you can also include developers, product managers, project managers, strategists. Honestly, each discipline adds another angle, another lens to view the problem in, and you're able to approach the solution differently by doing so. And I find that sometimes people forget to include clients and stakeholders as well. By including your clients into workshops, ideation workshops, this can lead to greater insights, not just from a user perspective, but you're able to understand what's important for their business. Not only that, but you'll be able to have a champion within that company that you're designing for. All right. So now that we know who needs to be involved, what kind of activities are involved in an ideation session? So there are many methods for ideation. Below, I just chose the 4 most commonly used techniques, so you can add that to your toolkit. The first is brainstorming, and I'm sure that people have brainstormed before, and brainstorming is a catch-all phrase for ideation sometimes, but brainstorming is an actual ideation method. So the steps to that is you lay out the problems and objectives, and you generate solutions individually before discussing it as a group. Everyone shares their ideas, and during this phase, no one is criticized or rewarded. And this is to keep the ideas flowing, and you avoid shutting down any voices or opinions. Second is mind mapping. So this is a more visual representation of ideas. You write down the central focus of the ideation's goal in the middle, then branch out from that prompt. By doing this, you're creating a web, and you're able to connect ideas together or just branch off a different idea, creating more like a spider web. Third is Crazy Eights. So Crazy Eights is amazing if you don't have a lot of time and you want to generate as many ideas as possible. So each participant has 8 stickies to jot down an idea or sketch an idea or do a rough wireframe. The rule of thumb here is that it's only 1 idea per sticky though. You set a timer for 8 minutes and with 1 minute per idea. So 1 minute per sticky. Once the time is up, you go around and share your idea. You can also rinse and repeat if you want to further develop on one idea. And finally, it's storyboarding. So this, again, is more of a visual method. Participants can write down or sketch an idea on a sticky. And when everyone is done, we rearrange the stickies to create a story based on the goal of the session. And the storyboarding is extremely helpful if you need to categorize items, if you need to create sequences, or if you want to look at information simultaneously. All right. So now you know who needs to be involved and how you do it, So what kind of tools do you need to do a workshop for ideation? For collaboration, the obvious answer here is Zoom, Google Hangouts, but there are other software as well, such as Butter. For workshop tools, since we are now in the COVID era and everything is done digitally, Miro, Session Lab, Figma Jam, Whimsical, UiZard, those are all workshop tools where you can create a virtual workshop. So instead of relying on in-person activities. And finally, if you want a treasure trove of ideation methods, you can look at various websites, and then Group, Hyper Island, Service Design Tools. All of those will have ideation methods that you can look through and learn from. All right. So the basic structure of an ideation workshop has 5 steps. First is, you might have guessed, knowing what the problem space is. So make sure you have a clear problem statement in the perspective of the user for the workshop. Second, pick an activity. You can choose 1 or more ideation techniques here. Learn about different ideation techniques, especially if you're new, and when to use them. Then you want to create an agenda for those chosen activities. Third, you want to set up the workspace. So either create the Miro board if you're doing it digitally, or if you're doing it in person, make sure that the meeting rooms are set up to run the ideation activity smoothly. Fourth is the actual facilitation, the actual workshop. This is when you go through the activities and you have a discussion at the end. What people don't realize is the discussion takes more time than the actual ideation sometimes. And this is where you get the creative juices flowing and start bouncing ideas off of one another. If this is your first time facilitating, I would recommend looking up the basics of facilitation to ensure smooth discussions and you maximize the allotted time. The worst thing you can do is you have all these great activities planned and then you run out of time. So you only get through half of it. And finally, after you have all the ideas gathered, you want to vote on the ideas to see which one comes out on top. Always keep in mind how the solution will benefit the user and put aside your personal biases. All right, so let's go more in depth into preparing for a workshop. So this is sometimes overlooked, but I think this is pretty crucial when setting the stage. So you want to, before jumping into ideation, choose an icebreaker. And an icebreaker, if some people are unaware, is a short activity that introduces the group before the meeting takes place. And it should take about a few minutes per person. Ask the participants about their name, role, and information so they're humanized and it's a level playing field since everyone's answering the same question. Having an icebreaker is shown to improve the efficiency of workshops and increase participation by reducing tension and strengthening connections. The last thing you want to do, and it's pretty painful, is when you have a workshop and no one is talking and you just hear crickets. Some icebreaker activities are, as we did today, what's your favorite? Ask a random question like, what song shaped you in high school? Two truths and a lie. If I had a superpower. It can be, honestly, any question to ask the group. Second is preparing invitations and doing the pre-work. So you'll need to create a list of participants to invite, and this is dependent on the workshop, who you're going to invite. You want to invite appropriate stakeholders, clients, team members. And when doing so, you also want to create a pre-work deck for them. And what that is a slide deck to send out to participants before the workshop. This can include an agenda for the workshop, problem statements and goals that will be tackled during the ideation, the summary of ideation activities that people might be going through as well. And this is very important, the research and insights that participants must know before the workshop. If people don't come prepared, then you just waste probably half the workshop going through all the pertinent information. And dry runs. Practice makes perfect. And this is not just to get your jitters out. Practicing will make sure that you nail the timing, especially if you have a lot of activities done or planned, and ensure that your instructions are clear. Practice at least once, I would say, before your workshop, and you can recruit anybody. You can recruit your friends, colleagues to quickly run through the activities. All right, and so how do you prepare your workspace? The key here is that you want to create a workspace that makes the participants feel comfortable while ensuring that they have everything they need for that ideation session. So if it's in person, it could be having sticky notes, pens, whatever you need for that session. And if it's a virtual workshop, make sure you have that digital workspace prepared with virtual sticky notes, instructions, agendas, etc. And a tip here is a new stimuli or environment can help participants become more creative. So if you'd like, use props or anything, images, if it's virtual. So if it's now moving on from facilitator to participants, what are the ideation best practices if you're actually going through an ideation workshop? The first is quantity over quality. The goal for this is to make sure that you have as many ideas as possible. So throw your craziest ideas and critical thinking goes out the window. Second is no judgment. As mentioned, we want to create an environment where people feel safe to throw out zany ideas. So by having judgment or critiquing early on in the workshop, that stifles creativity and silence voices. There is a time for that when we are evaluating the ideas, but during the ideation session itself, we want to keep that not to a minimum, but to 0. Third, we want to document ideas. So this should come as a no-brainer, but I have been in sessions where we have a lot of great ideas and none of them are captured on the stickies. So capture ideas so you're able to refer back to them. And the key and the rule of thumb here is 1 idea per sticky, and we want to keep it concise. Fourth, we want to ignore constraints. So real world constraints such as business and technological feasibility, we don't want to consider them when we're ideating. Rather, we want to focus on the user and their needs. And we've talked about this before, but know your stuff before coming. Know the research, know the problem space, know the context that has been outlined in the research and define phases. If you don't know the user, what's the point of developing a solution for them? You're essentially developing a solution for yourself then. And finally, Lego block ideas. So what I mean here is that each idea is a Lego block that contributes to the final product. You want to build off of your teammates' ideas and leverage the variety of perspectives. This isn't a time for you to think that to want to have the best idea. You want to be able to use each other as a sounding board here. And finally, evaluating ideas. Evaluating ideas are important because we want to pick the idea that resonates with the team, but also choose something that is incredibly pertinent and important to the user problem. And like ideation methods, evaluation methods, there are a plethora of them. So I've listed a couple down below, but depending on the workshop and depending on the group that you have, you want to choose the appropriate method. All right. So we do have a workshop activity planned, and we'll need 8 volunteers or 10 volunteers actually for this. So if you want to participate, you can either throw your name in the chat or raise your hand. I think you can do that through Zoom. If not, we're just going to pick people at random. So. All right, so we have Julio, Hillary, Kaya, right? All right, Pollock, Christina, Emily, awesome. Pian, and how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. One more person then. Aries.
Aries.
Awesome.
It's 8. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, we can do 8 even if we don't have any more brave people wanting to join in. Oh, we have Nisha here. All right,
Okay.
last chance to join. Michael. All right, cool.
Okay, we got
So
10.
I hope y'all were paying attention because we are going to do crazy 8s. Oh, I just changed the screen too early. I forgot. So agenda here. So today what we're going to be doing is understanding the problem space. We're going to pretend that we've already done the define and research phase. I'll do a quick overview of the user persona. And then we'll start with the crazy 8s activity. We won't go through this just for the sake of time, but we'll go through what affinity mapping is, voting, as well as prioritization matrix. So the problem that we'll be tackling today is customers are complaining about long wait times in their veterinary clinic's waiting room. So the how might we statement here is how might we improve the waiting room experience so we can improve the user satisfactions and increase return visits. And don't worry, you don't need to take notes right now. This will be available on the Miro board. So the persona that we want to keep in mind is Charlotte. So Charlotte is a 23 marketing intern and she loves animals. She has a cat and a dog. And even though she's very busy and doesn't make a lot of money, she will do anything for her pets. Because she is a marketing intern, she is pretty tech savvy. And right now her needs are, she needs to find care for her animal that is top quality, and she needs to trust her animal caretakers. Her frustrations here is that her pets are pretty old, so she needs to have a dependable clinic that she can rely on. Her animals are also pretty skittish, so they don't do well in busy environments. So this leads us to our activity. So I will send a link. And for the people who volunteered, you can pop in the chat right now. Halliq, can you share that? My Zoom is not
Yes.
being helpful right now.
Sure. I can share it.
Gracias. So here we have the problem and how might be statement if you want to refer back to it, as well as the persona.
Yep. So I just popped the link in the chat for people who volunteer. Just go into the mirror board. Do you want to share the mirror board, Melanie? Like you can stop sharing this one so that others can watch what our volunteers are actually doing in the workshop.
I forgot that I was just sharing the tab here.
That's okay.
Thank you for telling me, or else I would have continued the entire session just talking as if people could see.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. So today for the ideation session, we're going to be doing crazy eights. So as a quick refresh on what crazy eights is, you'll have 1 minute per sticky note to write down or sketch ideas. So you'll see examples up top of some crazy eights methods. It could honestly be a couple of words that you jot down. It could be rough sketches of wireframes. It could be the
Zoom in.
Oh, yep. It could be the person going through the situation. So it could, and it doesn't need to be just all wireframes, all scenarios. You can do whatever pops into your head. Here, the goal of Crazy Eights is to create as many ideas as possible here. So the actual ideation portion or the sketching and the writing will take about 8 minutes. I'll keep score of time, and I'll let you know after each minute, so you'll be able to move on to the next sticky note. And you'll notice that most of the examples here are done on paper. So if you aren't comfortable with Miro, or you want to actually do it on paper, you can use a piece of paper over here and fold it into 8 quadrants and do it manually. So if you're more of a visual person and you want to sketch ideas down and not write them down, do so and just take a picture of it to upload onto Miro. So I'll give everybody a minute to get their papers if they want to do it, and find some pens if you want to do it manually. And here, again, refer back to the persona and the problem statement. We want to hear ideates on digital solutions that can enhance pet owners' experiences in waiting rooms. After the 8 minutes, we'll go over our ideas.
Anybody have any questions?
We have to draw, like kind of room with something.
So it doesn't have to be a room. So the problem statement is basically like how can we improve a pet owner who is coming to the clinic and he or she is like in the waiting room, right? And apparently they don't like that waiting experience. So the ask is like, how can we make their experience better? Okay, so that's so that they actually feel a little bit more happy and they would be okay with coming back to the clinic. Okay, so that's the problem statement, and that is what we're trying to solve. So we're going to take 8 minutes. and in this 8 minutes, for like every 1 minute, we'll try to create an idea. Okay, so basically at the end of the 8th minute, we would have like 8 different ideas which could solve this problem. Typically, yes, we are asking for a digital solution. So that means like, can we do something with an app, or maybe can we do something with maybe a touch screen in the clinic? Okay, it could be anything. It could be anything that pops in your mind. Okay, it doesn't have to be on a mobile phone. It doesn't have to be on a website. Okay, it could be like a touch screen there. It could be like maybe a digital display, whatever that comes into your mind. So that's where this whole Crazy 8 comes name. So it can be as crazy as you want. Okay, don't be restricted to a certain platform or a device. Yeah, go crazy, create as many as you want. Okay, if you guys are comfortable with drawing, as Melanie was saying, take a piece of paper and start drawing there. Or if you guys comfortable with Miro, just grab the sketch pen over there and then start sketching over there. Or if you guys like, I can't draw, then I see Hillary. She's like typing stuff over there, so you can do that also. So Melanie, do you want to start now? I think people are ready.
People are really keen. So I'll start the timer for 8 minutes, and I'll give you a warning for every minute that's gone by, so you can move on to the next piece of paper. We are now going to share ideas. So this is where if you don't have a lot of time left, usually we ask people to share maybe 1 or 2 of their best ideas and move as a group, or move through the group. Or if you have a lot of time and a lot of great ideas, people can go through all of their stickies. Because we only have 14 minutes today, we're going to do a very, very condensed version of it. So I'll pick 3 people to share their top ideas. All right, so let's do the visiting developer over here. I like that you were drawing everything. So why don't you share what you think is your top idea here?
That's a Julio.
Is that Julio? I thought Julio was here.
Oh, okay.
No.
Who was the? Oh, okay. Who's the one who was drawing everything?
Me.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah.
Hi there. Thank you. So yeah, I just did a lot of little drawings. My favorite one is there's some really funny ones there, but I like by the end I got to the idea, what if there was a really simple app, nothing complex for the vet's office, where you could upload pictures of your pets and it'll just run you through like a simple, like the breathing square, like the inhaler app, where you can kind of breathe along with the pictures of your pets, because your pets will react to your body language, your personality. So it helps at the vet. If you're calm, they're calm. So you could use some of the other things. You use the towels with the pheromone spray, but that's something that kind of covers both people, both the pet and the person.
Yeah, the pheromone spray was really interesting. I was looking at that, but that's a really good idea. All right, cool.
Thank you.
So let's move on to Hillary over here. You had a lot of ideas. So why don't we pick one and you can walk us through that one.
So what I was thinking is that like when people are waiting, they don't know how long they will be waiting. So what I'm like thinking is to have like some type of like electronic boards that show like a list of people like waiting in turns, and also like basically like an estimation of how long do I need to wait. Like if like one person needs to wait 3 hours, they can just like leave their pets there and then run some errands and come back, and so that they won't like feel like like they have to wait for a very long time.
Like they're wasting your time, yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Awesome. All right. And then does anybody have a volunteer? Does anybody want to volunteer their idea, or should I also pick a random person? All right. It's a tie between Kaya and Christina. Or did you just have your hands up from last time? I think you just never lowered their hands.
Mine is from last time, but I'll volunteer.
All right, cool.
So I was thinking like a pet case manager, like in hospitals or medical centers. Sometimes they have case managers that like manage like the healthcare of patients. So maybe like there could be the vet could have like, people that have assigned to different pets that they can kind of keep in communication with and keep track of the health of the pet and check in and help get appointments as needed.
All right. So again, usually we would go through everyone's ideas, but we are running out of time and there are more things I want to share with y'all. So I'll quickly run you through a couple of the evaluation methods that you can use to start picking out the ideas. So after people have shared all of their ideas or some of their ideas, what we can do is affinity mapping. So that is when you start grouping ideas into themes. This is used very helpful when you have a lot of participants and a lot of ideas, then you want to be able to kind of understand the patterns that come out of it. The second is voting. So voting is usually you have 3 votes and you're able to vote on if you've already done affinity mapping before, then you can vote on that group, or you can vote on that on a specific sticky. So you're able to use your votes multiple times on the same idea if you like. If one idea really impressed you, then you can use all 3 votes on one idea. And this is usually done silently. And later we'll discuss the top ideas. And finally, and unfortunately, I'm sorry, we're not going to be running through all of it. Finally, after you have your top picks, you can go through a prioritization matrix over here. So the parameters over here that I've chosen is value to stakeholders as well as ease to implement, but these can be anything that you choose. So this can also be like value to the user, whatever is actually important for your specific project. And then you'll be able to choose, put the ideas on the matrix itself, and then have a discussion afterwards, discussing why those certain stickies are placed where they are. And then after hearing everyone's thoughts, you might be able to move it down, move it up, move it sideways, based on the opinion that are formed. All right. And before we go back to the slide, does anybody have any questions regarding this? All right. If not, we are going to move in to, am I sharing just my tab or am I sharing the window? Can everybody see the slides?
Yeah, the slides. The
Okay, awesome. So we're moving on to the 4th phase, which is prototyping. So prototyping is bringing the solutions that you have just discussed and ideated on and creating an experimental model based off of those ideas. So the goal here is to create a user flow or actualize a physical or digital user flow and gather feedback in order to validate and refine your designs. So here, the key fundamentals here are visualizing the solution. By doing so and actually putting it onto screens and into a flow, you're able to uncover unintended scenarios. And you're able to also show stakeholders what the product may look like and function as. So you're moving from conceptual to actuality. Second is receiving feedback. So you want to understand what works well or what doesn't work well for users, so you have a solid foundation to build your improvements on. And finally, you want to adapt changes early. So you want to start prototyping as early as possible. And this is to avoid incurring any expensive mistakes. And this is usually done by producing the wrong product and not iterating and prototyping. This also speeds up the time to market by minimizing the errors before release. So before you start prototyping, there are 4 questions you want to ask. What device am I prototyping for? So is it a tablet? Is it a desktop? Is it a mobile app? What is the fidelity level that you need for this prototype? How much of the interactions and flows do I need to show? And how much time do I have to create this prototype? So there are 3 different types of prototypes that you can create. The first being low fidelity. So a low fidelity prototype is the simplest visualization of the solution, as you see in the left over here. So only key details are included, and this is usually done through sketching on paper or doing very, very, very minimal digital designs. And this is done usually very early on in prototyping when you have a lot of room to experiment and when you have a lot of ideas that you want to go through. Usually users only need a quick overview of the product, meaning that the lack of realism of the app is not an issue here. So the reason that you might want to choose a low fidelity prototype is because it's super fast, it's easy, and affordable. All you really need is a piece of paper. You don't need any technical skills if you're going the more analog route, and you can eliminate the most obvious problems right off the bat. And because it is done in such a rough manner and with such minimal details, it does encourage further innovation because it's obvious to the designers and the participants that the prototypes are not finalized yet. So below, I have included a couple of resources or a couple of tools on how you can create your prototypes. Obviously, the easiest being the paper and stickies and pen method. But there are also different types of software like Figma, Sketch, Miro, UiZard, and Balsamiq for you to do this. Second is mid-fidelity. So mid-fidelity is a grayscale digital design version of your designs. And this has limited functionality, so a user can click through it and interact with it, but it doesn't give you any other flows other than what you're trying to test. So you use mid-fidelity when your ideas are a little bit more solidified and you want to refine the design instead of just testing it. So you need here a validation of key interactions and flows, and you want to do this when you still have opportunity to change the direction of the solution if necessary. The reason you might want to choose mid-fidelity over low fidelity is because it allows you to go from conceptual to implementation more quickly. It's also easier for users to understand the screens because there's, as you see, more details available. So my favorite when designing mid-fidelity prototypes is Figma. You can also use Sketch, InVision, and Adobe. And finally, we have high fidelity. So high fidelity is the most realistic approximation of the final product. And this has comprehensive flows, meaning that it's not just the one flow that you want to test. This is pretty much what the product might be. Obviously, because so much detail and effort goes into it, it is a lot more expensive and a longer process. So when you want to do high fidelity prototyping is when the ideas have already been tested and refined, and you need to test all the interactions of the product. The high fidelities also give you more accurate results on how well the solution will match your user needs, and you can also see how the visual design is landing with the users. Another reason for using high fidelity is you might want to demo the product or need it for a case study. So high fidelity prototypes can predict how users will respond in the marketplace because, again, this is almost the same as the product that might ship. And it'll show stakeholders and clients what your app may look like after it is developed. So high fidelity, you want to make sure that the UI and animation is integrated. So the software here is a little different. The software below are more so towards making sure that you have that smooth finish. So Adobe, After Effects, ProtoPie are some of the options. Figma, again, I have done prototyping on Figma before, but it is very limited compared to some of the other more, high fidelity.
Yeah, you can also use like IterateUX, which basically connects your After Effects with like a Sketch or like Figma. So you can like easily transition and like bring up those effects which you've created in Adobe After Effects and bring it to Sketch or Figma. You can also use Lottie. Lottie is a platform again which allows you to like so they have like a lot of like pre-filtered and like big library of animations for your prototyping. So you can like buy from them and then you can like integrate that into your prototypes, or you can also like use the Lottie editor to actually create those kind of like animation, smooth transition and everything, and they can bring it back. So Lottie is also like very much useful.
Yeah. And when I was learning UX, one of my mentors told me that if you don't use animations when you're prototyping, it's literally just you're stitching together screens, and that's just you're still just have a wireframe. So you want to, when you're doing a high fidelity prototype, you want to consider all aspects of the solution or the experience for the user. All right, and that wraps up with a minute to spare. So for the next 60 seconds, I'll be taking questions. But if you want, if you have any more questions or you want to get in contact with us, you have our email addresses below over there. And you're also more than welcome to add us on LinkedIn if you have any further questions there. All right. So I'll open the floor to any questions that people might have.
Thanks for such a great session. I see that somebody asked where the recordings get posted. They'll be put onto YouTube after a little bit, probably. I don't want to give a timeline because I'm not entirely sure what the how quickly they'll be up, but yeah, they'll be on YouTube eventually. For anybody that has questions, please drop them in
Melanie,
the chat.
somebody wants to see the slide of tools and softwares.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we can share the deck with Kim, and she can like post the deck.
Oh yeah, we can.
Yeah, so you can show it now as well. But I'll make it available.
Yeah, I think it's UX and Tile. Yeah, we can share it now, and we'll also give the deck. So yeah.
Okay. And we have a question from Kari that says, "How do you decide how much time goes into an ideation session?"
I would say it totally depends on like how much time is available for you to deliver the project, right? Like we have had projects where all we do is like ideation and innovation. So if that is the case, we'll do research and then we'll figure out the problem areas that we need to solve, and then we would spend maybe like 5-6 weeks just in ideation and prototyping. So that means we have like a lot of time to actually like play around with different techniques. We can actually do a proper design sprint to actually like sit and like ideate, prototype, test, come back, ideate again, prototype, test, come back. So it's a lot more fun in that way. There are projects where you would probably get like 2 hours or 3 hours to conduct this ideation session because because it might be like an end-to-end delivery project. So that means you're going to do your discovery and research, and then you're going to do your analysis, and then you might use like maybe like a week in preparing for this ideation workshop. You might get 3 hours with your business stakeholders, clients, maybe your end users and your teammates, and then to do this ideation workshop. And then you're going to go back. You're going to wrap your head around all of the ideas that's generated, and then from there you're going to push into design. So it totally depends on what type of project you're working on and how much timeline you have, and the end goal of that particular project as well.
Yeah, a lot of the times you want to. The decision's already made for you because maybe the stakeholders or people who need to be involved can only spare an hour or 2 hours. So you want to try and format the activities so you get what you need from them. Ideation sessions can last a day depending on the situation and how many people are involved. So ideation sessions are super fluid, and it's how you put them together.
But if you want like a quick answer, how do you decide? Then yes, if you think you don't have a lot of time, you have like fixed deadline, then my recommendation is obviously like spend maybe like 2 to 3 days in preparation planning, and then maybe like spend 1 day for the ideation, and then maybe like one more day to actually like do up the follow-up activity, like basically like collecting all the results and telling the team these are the shortlisted ideas, and like maybe like create some quick sketches to actually showcase those ideas, because ideation will not be over till you do this follow-up activity. So yeah, I would say maybe like 3-4 days would be a good time frame, and maybe like the actual workshop itself could be like anywhere between 1 hour to 3 hours would be like a good time frame.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that answer. Very different from squeezing it all into this session, right?
Yeah.
We have a question from Hillary that says that she's currently doing a mid-prototyping and it's a redesign of this app. However, he's feeling a little bit overwhelmed in prioritizing which feature to redesign first. Is there a way to help with this problem?
You want to answer this, Melanie, or should I?
Yeah, I mean, the example that we showed here was the prioritization matrix, where you decide on what is important, what parameters are important. Maybe this is where the feasibility comes in. So if for your client, if they have a lot of they don't have a lot of technical reach, if they have a lot of constraint, that could be one of the parameters. You need to look at what is important for the user as well as how to achieve it, and then map it out on that matrix.
Yes. So I'm going to say, yeah, adding to that, I'm going to say like, yeah, 2 more or 3 more parameters which you can use is like, yeah, number one, if you're not sure about your solution, right? If you feel like, oh, I'm not sure about this particular feature, I need to test this feature with users to see whether this feature works or not. So maybe that is one way to determine which feature that you should be prototyping or which flow you should be picking. Number 2 could be like features which even clients are not sure about, like they're like, we don't know. Maybe you design and show us and we can like give you some feedback on it. So maybe that is like one more way to determine which features are more important for the business stakeholders to actually see. The third way is also to see if that feature needs to be prototyped to be explained to the development team, because development teams, sometimes we just give them like flat wireframes or flat mockups and we never talk about the interaction and stuff, right? Like interactions or animations or transitions. So that is when I would say like maybe a prototype would help them, because that actually like demonstrates them that, you know what, when you click on this button, this is going to appear from the left and then users can scroll up and then this is going to disappear, this is going to appear, right? So I think that would be like I would say like maybe think from users angle or from your business stakeholder angle or from like for the demo purposes to the dev team. I would say maybe like one of these 3 angles would actually help you in actually picking up which features to prototype and which ones to keep in wireframe or like high fidelity mock states. What do we get from the ideation? Like narrow down the design solutions?
Yeah, so ideation can be used whenever you run into a problem, or if you're stuck. So if you're developing a new feature, if you're developing a new product, if you want a different angle on a problem, you can do an ideation session. The goal here is to narrow down, have a broad set of ideas and narrow it down to what's most important for the user as well as the company that you're working with.
Yeah, Kevin, I mean, you kind of answered your question. Yeah, but yes. So because usually when we sit and think right on our own, we usually like tend to come up with like maybe even 100 ideas. But we'll brush off 99 of those ideas because we ourselves will convince us most of the times that there's certain ideas are not good. So that is why we usually like do the ideation to bring in different views to generate ideas which we might not have thought of, and like maybe the idea which you're thinking might not be good. You know, it might be like you can like discuss that with your team member who's actually in the session to actually make it into a much more efficient or much more like idea which you could actually implement. And yeah, as you said, as part of your second question, that is the answer. So we generate tons of ideas which we might or might not thought of, and then shortlist from those list of ideas into the ones which we might actually implement, which might be actually fitting the user's needs. Ricky Young. Curious, how do you decide your idea is finalized after doing iteration on mid product? Sorry, I'm just curious, how do you decide that your idea is finalized after doing iteration on mid prototype of a designs? What are the possible KPI? I guess that's where we go and test with users. We get feedback from users, or we get feedback from the business.
Yeah.
Because usually like when we do ideation session, we're going to generate like so many ideas and we're going to shortlist those ideas based on like, that's where we use some of those evaluation or some of those like voting techniques, right? And we're going to shortlist maybe like 3 ideas. We're going to go and like prototype them quickly, and we're going to either go to our mock users or our actual users. We're going to get some feedback. We're going to see which idea works the best or which ideas resonates best with the users. And then we're going to like unpack that idea more. We're going to like start working on like in-depth features and in-depth scenarios and all those things. So at this stage, KPIs could be like different because KPIs itself is actually a workshop which we usually run parallel along with these ideation workshops. So that is like usually done by product team and strategy teams, as where we actually like try to determine determine what are the actual OKRs or KPIs for your customers for that particular product. So where we unpack what is the vision and the mission for the company, what kind of things that the business stakeholders care about, what kind of things the customers care about, and what kind of things that we should measure, right? So that is actually a separate activity which we do in parallel. So in this case, for me, I would say, how do I finalize my idea? By usually going to the users to see which one resonates better to them.
Yeah, and sometimes you want to keep iterating and iterating and iterating. And a lot of designers that I've talked to, they're never satisfied with their design. But after you've done some research and there's less feedback on it, then you should put down the pen and move forward.
There's a question from Vanessa. For the purpose of this challenge, would our users be our clients? That we should. I mean, your users would be your users, but they are going to be one of your stakeholders. So you can, if you have like any users or any of your friends and family who actually like fits your user persona, then yes, maybe you can use them in your ideation session, which we usually call as like co-creation sessions as well. So we actually like send pre-read materials to our actual end users, telling them this is the activity that we are going to do, and we actually bring them in and we do the same kind of exercise with actually our end users. If this is the problem that you would be facing, what kind of solutions that you think would help you? So we ask them those questions, and they actually sit and like co-create with us, and they actually do like maybe crazy eights. They actually do like brainstorming. So that is also an interesting way to actually do ideation, because you're actually hearing it from your actual users, right? So, oh my God, I've used so much actual in that sentence.
That's all I heard.
Yeah. So that is also a fun way to actually run this ideation session. But in this case, I think your users would be stakeholders, but they would not be your clients.
In terms of feasibility, usually our developers participating in the ideation phase, or are they involved later? I like to involve them as soon as possible. It's terrible when you design something and you realize that it's just not feasible for them. So you have to go back to square one, or you have to really pare it down. So even if they aren't involved in the ideation session, I would always have open communication with the devs or with a dev. Maybe you're friends with somebody and say like, hey, how much effort do you think this is going to take on the dev side? And as you progress, you'll have more of an idea of how much effort it is to realize a certain feature or whatnot. But it's always good to, I think, have that communication, even if it's not during the workshop.
Absolutely, I agree. Because most of the times when you are in this phase of work, by this time that the technology team or the development team would have done their technical research. They would have done their tech spikes. They would have like identified what kind of technical architecture that they're going to use for the system. So that means they have like determined what is going to be the backend system, what is going to be the front end system, what kind of frameworks I'm going to use. So those kind of things would actually determine what kind of designs you're going to produce, because after you do all those things and then you go to them that's where like what Melanie said was true. Because if you go to them with like crazy designs and they'll be like, no, our framework or our backend will not support these things. So that is why it's better to involve them as quick as possible, so that you get to hear their perspectives. Like, no, these kind of things cannot be like implemented, right? So that's where like these involving teams, like it's not just like dev team, like so many teams that we involve, or teams like which you guys or we might not usually like interact with on a day-to-day basis. Like we would talk to like a HR team, like we would talk to like legal team, we would talk to like pops team. So we would talk like different types of teams within a company, because all of those users actually bring in like different angles. So it's definitely appreciated, or definitely like I would give a thumbs up if you guys are like involving like different teams who might actually contribute to this product. Maybe not at that stage, but they might come later, right? But it's good to involve them upfront, so that you actually get that perspective upfront.
And that's what we were talking about when we said draw from the strengths of a multidisciplinary team. It's like use the resources that you have around you.
I'm kind of worried that a week won't be enough time for ideate and create mid-fidelity. It's fine. You can quickly do an ideation session for like one day, and then again, as we said, that's where different types of prototyping comes into help. So you don't have to create a high fidelity mock with all the crazy animations. You can just do a quick paper prototype as well. because that is the aim of this whole session, right? To actually ideate, create the idea, prototype quickly, and get the feedback to see whether that idea resonates with users or not, right? So that is what we're trying to achieve. So once you do that, you can actually like maybe do a quick set of wireframes. So in that case, I would say, I think you guys have enough time, like maybe 1-2 days for ideation, 1 day for a quick like lo-fi prototype, and then maybe like 1 day to get some feedback and then iterate, so that you guys are like done with that work.
And actually, I would say you shouldn't be doing high fidelity right now because you're doing user testing next week, right? So usually you don't go into high fidelity unless you have some sort of usability testing to back up the time and effort that you're going to sink into it. So if you're just doing the ideation and moving into low fidelity or mid fidelity even, you should have plenty of time.
I think there's another question from Rick. Do we consider accessibility in terms of ideation session? Yes, we do consider it. But again, we don't go into the nitty-gritty details of like, oh, it should have like ARIA labels, or it should have, like proper like font size. It should have like proper like contrast. So we don't go on to like nitty-gritty details. But if accessibility is one of the core factors which drives that particular experience, like for example, let's just say if it is a hospital, like the example that we can, so there could be like a huge amount of like people of like old age group that might be coming into the hospital, right? Or it could be like kids who might be coming into the hospital. So if that is the case, then yes, we would consider making that solution more accessible, or it could be like more inclusive. Yes, that is definitely a factor which we keep in mind, but we don't go into the actual details at this stage because again, we are just trying to generate an idea. We're not like designing the solution itself. So if that is the factor, then yeah, you should always keep accessibility and inclusivity in your mind. And you can go into the details or all of those weeds, like once you actually like shortlist those ideas and you start designing the solution.
Yeah, and I think accessibility can be like a whole different session altogether. There's a lot involved in making sure that things are properly assessed and designed with accessibility in mind.
Absolutely. Because like doing accessibility for project, most people think, oh, I'm going to just go online. I'm going to run my designs through an online accessibility checker and it's good. No, that is not how accessibility is done. Accessibility starts with a different set of process, and then it goes all the way to like you doing proper, like audits of your designs or your existing websites, and then going into like incorporating accessibility into your designs, and then annotating and defining accessibility for the UI designers and developers, and then once your high fidelity mocks or your prototypes have been developed, then you actually use actual accessibility experts by platforms like Accessibility or like Fable to actually test your designs, to do some actual benchmark testing and everything. So and after like development team has done the development, they would actually like run a proper accessibility QA. So it's like a phase of things that you have to do. So it's not just like as a designer, as a UX person, that like when we design the wireframes or when we design the UI design, I'm just gonna like consider, no, it's actually like a lot more broader spectrum, and it's gonna take like probably like 1-2 hours for us to go over all of the stuff.
Absolutely.
I think there's like one more question. Yeah, we'll take one more question and we'll wrap up because we have to like jump into another meeting. Aside from prototyping, developers understand interactions. What are the ways to consider? Sorry, I think Jwalita's push your comment up. I'm just scrolling down. Aside from prototyping, so that developers understand interactions, what are the ways to consider developers during ideation? I would say like developers, they bring a lot of value, at least for me, because like by involving them, not just during ideation, like we involve them right from research phase itself, because they're going to explain us about like what kind of frameworks they're considering, and they're gonna have all of those conversations. So usually designers do not enter into this conversation because we don't understand, but this is why I think it's more important for us to like start talking to dev team right early, because like when we do our stakeholder research or when we do our user research or secondary research or whatever is it, Okay. Tech team is also doing their technological research. They're going to talk to tech team from the client side. They're going to start seeing different platforms, different backend systems, front-end systems, right? So this is where I would say, like, it's not just ideation in my point of view. You should like have these conversations with them, because they're gonna explain you the strengths and weaknesses of certain frameworks or certain, like, for example, you're doing an online e-commerce store. So your tech team might be considering Shopify platform, or they could be considering like Elastic Path, or they might be considering like Optimizely. Okay, let's just say they're considering these three platforms. So from like face value, if you're not part of those conversations, you will never understand like what you can do or cannot do with those systems. So this is where I would say, like, having those early conversations with your tech team, where you can like share, okay, these are the things that users are interested in, these are the goals of businesses that we want to implement. Okay, and tech team would actually like try to explain you, okay, you know what, we can achieve these goals with Shopify, but we cannot do these things, or we can actually achieve 90% of our goals with Optimizely, but 10% is not possible. So you can have all of those conversations with them much earlier. And that means you're actually understanding like how it is going to be implemented, what kind of features can be like implemented. And, from there, it's a lot more easier for you to actually do designs, because now you actually understand the systems that is actually being used, and the framework that is being used, and what sort of features can be like achieved through that. So this is why for us, at least from like Applied Digital perspective, like we actually like talk to our developers and tech team and data team like way more earlier. Like we bring them into conversations where we talk about users' goals, like what kind of features we are thinking about, what kind of goals, what kind of KPIs that we have set for the business and everything. I hope that I answered your question. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Hey everyone, on behalf of IterateUX, we would like to thank you so much for watching this week's event. If you like the content, please leave a like and subscribe. We'll have events every Thursday at 5:30 Pacific Time. Join our Discord in the description to find out more.